Morning.
Hi.
Morning. So we're Those Weirdos. We live and travel full-time in our self-converted Sprinter van, and today we're going to do one of our first top 10 videos, aren't we? So 10 things you should consider. You can't get that out. So 10 things you should consider before embarking on van life or travelling in your motorhome.
Number 1.
How will you make money on the road?
You're going to have to make some money. Loads of different ways to do this. There's lots of different blogs out there about the intricacies of different ways to make it, but it's the first thing that you really need to consider. Can you do the work that you currently do while you're travelling? Can you find a new job to do online? If you have a house, maybe instead of selling it, you could rent it out and live off of the rented income.
So a lot of people see a romanticised view of van life, particularly on Instagram, and maybe come across van life or full-time travelling through Instagram, and then from there your natural sort of progression would be to start watching YouTube videos. There's quite a lot of large YouTubers that are living full-time in their motorhomes or vans, and it's a natural progression to then think, great, I could sell my house, I could rent my house out, I can get myself a van, I'll fit it out, head off into the sun, I'll be parked up on the beach every night, I can make YouTube videos, and I can fund my travels by doing that. And whilst that is true to a point, we do know multiple YouTubers that are making a reasonable income, and in some cases quite a substantial income from YouTube. However, it's not as easy as it looks, and it does take a lot of time and many years sometimes to build up subscribers, a long time to monetize your channel. So personally speaking, I would say not to rely on YouTube as a potential income stream.
Unless you're already established.
In the short term. Yeah, we do know people that were established doing other things, and then they diversified their channel into van life, so they already had a certain amount of subscribers. But for those of you that may be considering that as an option, I mean, obviously we do YouTube, and we do have a monetized channel, and to be completely transparent, we're making between £50 and £100 a month out of YouTube, which is great because that's, you know, well needed money into the pot, but it's by no means the amount of money that you would need to live off. And to put that into perspective, I probably spend somewhere between 10 and 25 hours a week editing. So if you take, say, an average of 80 hours a month, looking at our monetized channel, I'm earning about £1 an hour.
And you have to consider all the other things as well. Can you commit to filming regularly as well as editing regularly? And it gets in the way of other things as well, or it can do. You know, if you want to just go for a nice day out, it certainly gets in the way of being present, because you can't be present and film the moment at the same time, so you have to get a bit of a balance in there. But it's just another way of making a bit of an income.
So for us, the way that we make our income is we were in event management, which with COVID has basically gone completely down the pan. So we have no income from that, and that was our sort of number one source of paying ourselves a wage every month. So we are looking at YouTube to help monetize our travels, but we've kind of looked at having lots of pots of small income streams. So a little bit from YouTube, a little bit maybe from blogs, a little bit maybe from affiliate links and that kind of thing. So if we get £5 here, £10 there, trying to top our income up.
That's a good point to make. If you're considering where you're going to get your money from, it doesn't all have to be from one source, the way maybe it did when you were living in a van, living in a house.
So the easiest thing, as Missy said, would be if you own a property and you're going to be leaving that potentially to go on your travels, rent that out, and then from the income you can maybe fund the majority of your travels. Alternatively, if you own a property, you could sell it, and then maybe if you're lucky enough to make a reasonable profit, you could put that in the bank or invest it and make an income from that.
Yes, of course, because not everybody's going to be setting off to live in a van full-time forever onwards. If you're only going to travel for a couple of years, then maybe you want to sell your house and then you'll be happily living off the proceeds.
Yeah. But I think one of the number one questions you see online is, I bought my van, I'm going to set off in X months when I've built it out, or I bought my motorhome, I want to leave at this date. How do I make money while I'm on the road?
Yeah.
I mean, some of the things that you can do is, there's quite a few digital nomad groups on Facebook that give you a lot of advice, but the sort of things people are doing, that they've diversified their career, if you want a better phrase, to things that they can do on the road would be, there are websites where you can teach English or your native language if it's not English, and you get paid sort of £10 to £12 an hour for that. Some of them you need to be qualified, but there are a few where you can just do it if you naturally speak English, so that's an option. There's all kinds of new jobs that are available digitally, so companies like Amazon, you can work remotely for them and do customer service, or you could maybe do call centre work. So there are quite a few options when you actually look into it. So number 2.
Where are you planning on travelling? Where do you really want to go travelling? Because that's going to make a difference to how you build out your van, perhaps, and certainly make a difference to the kind of gear you take with you. If you're planning on sticking in the UK for most of the time, maybe you've got things that are keeping you in the UK, or you don't really fancy going abroad, then you're going to need to bear in mind things like bins are not easy to come by in the UK for getting rid of your rubbish, so that might affect how you create storage space and rubbish bin in your van. The weather, of course. If you really fancy doing the Nordics, then you're going to need to have a really good heater. You're going to need lots of spare glow plugs in case your heater breaks. You're going to need blankets. You're going to need storage space for bigger, bulkier, warmer clothes.
Snow tyres.
Snow tyres or snow chains or shoes tucked away. Or you might be inclined, as we were, to go to the warmer places. So south of France, Spain, Portugal, Morocco, Turkey, anywhere really, really warm. And that's going to need a whole different set of things. So you're going to need to have a really good fan. Some people even put aircon in. You're going to need to have really good covers to put on your windows so that you can block the heat of the sun out during the day. You're going to need, I don't know, surfboards and extra swimsuits and snorkeling gear. So that's definitely something to bear in mind. Where are you planning on going, and how's that going to affect your storage and build of your van?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I saw just yesterday 3 different people on Facebook were saying, I bought my van, how much solar and electricity do I need? And of course that's a completely separate answer and video, in the sense that it depends on what kind of appliances you're going to use in your van. But from the where am I going to travel perspective, it can have a massive difference between how much solar there is from the sun. So if you're in a cold country in England and so on, there's very little sun. Are you going to be going to campsites loads or not at all, so that you do or don't have access to electric hookup? So I think when you're watching the video, if you are new to travelling, or you're considering it in the near future, when you look at the question, where am I going to travel, it's worth writing that down and then breaking it down into the kind of journey that you might make, and then considering all the potential issues, changes, add-ons that you might need to consider in your van build.
Yep.
So that you've got those covered.
Yep. And we didn't do that.
No.
We just jumped in the van and went, ooh, where should we go? And we headed south because, Spain, brilliant. And then we sort of stuck around there. But there were things that we would have done slightly differently if we'd known that we were going to be spending a lot of time in hot countries. And although I still fancy doing Denmark and Sweden and so on, generally I think we're going to stick around the hot countries. That's what we discovered, that we really like it.
And of course, again, where you're going to travel affects other parts of your van build, like what kind of insulation are you going to use on your van, or if you have a motorhome, is it adequately insulated to keep really hot weather out or keep you warm when it's really, really cold out? We know a lot of people that have bought a motorhome and then they've done a kind of mini van build on it and they've changed things in it, be that insulation, battery capacity or whatever, because the motorhome that they've bought has then not had the right kind of personalised build to suit their own travel requirements.
Yep. You did it last time.
Okay then. Go on.
We're doing it with our fingers because by the time we get to the end of the list we're going to be like, number 10. Yeah, let's do that. Number 3.
Tres.
Electricity. It has led on a little bit from the previous, but something that's really, really important. You're going to need to think about how much electricity you're going to need and where you're going to get it from. Your choices for getting electricity are fairly simple. You can have an electric hookup where you plug in if you're at a campsite or at a house or what have you. You can have solar, which almost every van has solar, but depends on how much you're going to have. Oh, charging from the alternator, so a battery to battery charger, where you charge your house batteries, your leisure batteries, what are from the starter battery as you're driving. There are lots of different places online which give you calculators, so you can work out roughly how much electricity you think you're going to need, and therefore how many amp hours of batteries you're going to need. Just for comparison, we've got 3 100 amp hour leisure batteries. But because they're AGM, we can only use 50% of that. So we've got 150 amp hours of usable electricity. And we have a 390 watt solar panel that can go up to 500 watt, but it doesn't do that very often, only in really direct bright sunlight. I wish we had more. We use a lot of electricity. We've got lights and fans and so on. We've got a fairly big fridge that uses quite a lot, so that's worth bearing in mind. But I think the biggest user is our laptops. Rosie loves to do gaming. We do a lot of editing. We both work online. We need more electricity than we actually have, and as soon as we can afford it, we're going to upgrade to lithium batteries, where you can get 80% of their use, not 50%, and I would even add more amp hours. I'd like to have 500 or 600 amp hours readily available. We can't upgrade the size of our solar panel, but maybe in a year or two we'll be able to get the same size panel and the technology will have changed so that we can get more amp hours out of that.
So for those of you that are really at the very beginning of considering van life or your build, talking about electricity, what we did when you said that we did it right but we did it wrong was we looked at our appliances and we looked at the ampage and wattage use of each appliance. We tried to estimate how many hours they would be used during a day so that we could work out how many amp hours we needed in our batteries, and that's a great place to start. But you then have to factor in, obviously, if your batteries are fully charged, how many days would it last for you to do all those things that I previously just mentioned? Because, for example, say you've parked up somewhere and there's no sun, you're in the middle of nowhere, so there's no electrical hookup, you're then limited how many days you can stay there unless you have the ability to charge up from the sun adequately to extend your stay. So if that then means you've got 2 days.
Or it affects what you can use in the van. So
Yeah.
we've been parked in places when we've had sudden overcast 3 days in a row and we haven't been able to plug in, as you say. So we've had to make the decision to not do any editing and to tell Rosie she can't do any gaming because we can't get the laptops out, because if we dip below 50% it's damaging our batteries.
Yeah.
Which is a bit of a bummer. Don't
Yeah,
really
a good
want to be doing
example. A good example was on our last trip. We stopped off in the south of Spain on a nice beach, and obviously it's after Christmas, so whilst the weather can be quite nice in Spain, it can also be quite chilly some of the time. Don't always guaranteed sun and so on. So we're parked up on the beach. We're at 100% because we've just driven, so our battery to battery charger has charged up the batteries. We park up, we settle in, we film a video, which is quite a complicated video. So I think it took me something like 20 or 25 hours to edit. So on the second day of that, our batteries were starting to get into the 60%. So that then means we'd have to hope the sun comes out, which it didn't. It started to rain. So we then had to go to a campsite because we wanted to go back to that beach. So we then had to pay for a campsite just so that we could plug into the electric hookup to have enough battery power to continue editing and then upload the video. So there are quite a few factors to sort of weigh up.
I would definitely recommend having all of the different ways.
Yeah.
Don't just stick a solar panel on the roof and assume it's going to do your needs, unless you have very, very light needs. If you have a teeny tiny fridge and all LED lighting and you don't intend to be on the laptop at all, then by all means just have a little solar panel. But I would recommend having hookup in case you need to go to a campsite, and have the alternator charger, because on cloudy days, if you're going to drive for a couple of hours, we found that a game changer.
Yeah.
And if you're in desperate need, you can always run your engine for half an hour just to top you up a little bit.
Yeah, we've done that quite a lot. It's not very good for your van, but it is great when you're... Again, that was another beach we were at, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And we wanted to stay there for a couple of weeks. Don't tell anyone, a couple of weeks. And it was, again, mixed weather, bit of sun, bit of rain, bit of wind, bit of cloud. It was in January. And we didn't want to have to keep driving off or go to a campsite, so we ran the engine for half an hour to an hour and a half a day, which gave us enough power to do editing and carry on.
Emergency use only, really.
Emergency use, yes. Mate,
I'm being very naughty, Cat. I am. So yes, 10 things to consider on a van.
Make
Lots of
sure
biscuits.
you've got room for biscuits.
Lots of biscuits and lots of boxes and comfy areas and blankets. That's it. That's all you need.
so number 4, numero cuatro, how do you intend to wash?
It's a good thing to think about.
It's
You've
a good
got to
thing to
pre-plan
think
it.
about,
You
yeah.
don't have to have a shower in your van, even though lots of people do.
Yep.
I've seen a couple of vans with bathtubs,
Yep.
which is really funky. I wish
is,
we'd
yeah.
thought of that.
So a lot of people go along the sort of basis of if you have a shower or a wet room, takes up a lot of space, particularly in a small van, a short wheelbase, but even in our van, which is a long wheelbase, you know, it's about 1.5 meters, and then it's full height, obviously. That was a decision that we made. But some people choose not to have a shower, some people choose to have a portable shower that they use outside. There's all kinds of ecologically sound ideas, like you can put black pipes on your roof to warm up water and then plug a shower in outside when you're
You
on
can
the
just
beach.
buy one of those bags, solar showers I think they're called,
Yep.
and it's just a bag with a pipe and a little nozzle on the end, and you hang it up in the sunshine and use that to shower. Some people don't have a shower in the van at all, or any way of doing it, and they plan to go to gyms.
Yeah.
I think that happens a lot more in America than
I
it
think
does in the
it's-
UK.
Yeah, gym's very popular
But
in
you can
America.
go, you just park up if you have a gym membership, and then you can use their facilities and their showers.
And then companies like Hose Lock have developed garden sprayers and turned them into showers. So it's basically a plastic water container that's airtight, and you pump it up like mad, creates pressure, and then instead of having your hose pipe plugged in, you have a shower attachment. And again, you can do that with warm water, cold water, hot water if you've got...
So if you're going to get one of them, then you would be using that outside, one presumes. Although ours actually isn't, its first purpose wasn't designed to be as a shower. We wanted to have a private toilet cubicle. And then we thought, well, since we've created a private toilet cubicle, then it might as well be a shower as well. So we've turned it into a wet room with a drain in the bottom, in the floor, that goes to our grey water tank underneath. And if we want to shower, it's literally a pump that you drop into a bucket of water with a hose with a shower head on the other end, and you can hook it up or stick it on the wall. And we put the bucket of water on the top of the toilet with the lid shut, and we shower in there. And if we want warm water, we have to boil it in the kettle. But it suits us, doesn't it?
It does.
Most of the time when we're in hot countries, we use the shower outside anyway. So we've had a couple of showers on the inside, and it's quite nice.
Yep. And then other people in emergencies, you've got the bucket wash, the wet wipe wash.
Yeah, bucket wash is equally adequate. We've seen people that have had either a big folding tub of some kind that they stand inside their van. People that have created like a hula hoop on the ceiling that can be removable, that they can hang a shower curtain on so that they can shower in their van without having a permanent structure. That's worth thinking about.
And again, it's a very personal thing, isn't it? Because I see people that go, I will not travel unless I have a proper shower in my van.
Yeah, hot running water and so on.
So we know people that have exactly that. They have a fully spec'd out bathroom with a boiler, they have hot water, they have a shower,
Yeah,
they
it's
can
all
have
possible.
a full shower. And then the considerations for that kind of thing is if you want to have a full shower every day, then you've got your water management.
Oh
because
yeah, you're going to have to
obviously
use a lot.
it uses a lot of water. So it's not just how do I wash or do I want to shower, it's where do you get your water, how often will you need to get your water, how do I heat it up if I have a boiler, don't have a boiler.
Yeah.
So again, good thing to write a list and work out
What's important to you, what you really think you can or can't do without. And you might well change over time. We've met people on the road who were really fastidious at the start, and then slowly over time they realised actually it's not that important to shower every single day. And we did that consideration. We deliberately chose, we didn't want to have a water boiler. It's no trouble to heat a pan or a kettle full of water whenever we want warm water. Number 5!
Cinco.
Cinco!
Numero cinco!
You should think about how long you'd like to travel or be on the road for. It might be a dead simple answer. You might think for 2 seconds ago, I want to do it forever. Kind of. Well, no, we didn't, did we? We thought we wanted to be on the road for about a year. We thought that would probably suit our needs. A year of travelling, lovely jubbly. And now we think we'd like to do it forever, don't we?
So yeah, it's am I going to be full-time? Am I going to be part-time? Or maybe you're going to be full-time but only for a certain period of time. So you've got a house and you're going to go off into the sunset for 6 months and then you're going to come back to your house. But it affects lots of things, doesn't it?
Yeah, you've got to think about your stuff. What are you going to do with your stuff? You're going to sell it all? You're going to put some in storage for when you get back? You're going to put it all in storage for when you get back?
So yeah, although we decided initially, I think we set ourselves a kind of 1 year window to kind of make it manageable, because it's quite a big jump to go from you live in your house. In our case, we had a nice 3-bed semi. We had our friends and family around us. We had all our stuff that we'd amassed over many years, from DVDs to collectibles, Lego, and all our clothes and so on. So we decided for us that we wanted to minimise as well, and we wanted to get rid of all the stuff that you don't actually need to be happy or to be live on a day-to-day basis.
Oh, that was liberating.
It was.
When we started getting rid of stuff, it was really hard, and we were getting rid of stuff that we weren't that fussed about anyway. And then the more we did it, the more enjoyable it was. So we kept everything that was important to us in storage, which isn't that much. It was photo albums and things that you just couldn't replace. But everything else we got rid of, and the more we got rid of, the better it was. It's like, I don't need any of this. I'm not defined by the things in my house anymore.
Absolutely. So how long you intend to travel obviously impacts on whether you get rid of most of your stuff, period, throw it away, sell it, or so on, or whether you've got to put it all in storage and stuff like that. And obviously when you're living on a van or in a motorhome, you can't have 10 coats and 15 jumpers and 45 pairs of underpants.
I do try.
You have to minimise all that down. Yeah. And as Missy said, it's quite hard, because for me, I'd spent 50 years living my life in a certain way, and I was a bit of a hoarder, to be honest. So I didn't throw anything out, so I had lots of duplicates and sometimes many things that were actually quite useless. So now I've been on a van for nearly 2 years. I don't miss any of it.
No.
I've got as I said,
bare essentials, really.
It's what you need to survive living on the road for different things. So jumpers for cold weather, t-shirts and shorts for warm weather.
Yep.
The amount of underwear that you require to survive for however long you want to survive before going to the laundrette, whether that's a week or 3 weeks or however.
The other thing that might impact thinking about how long you want to be on the road for is where you're going to go and how long you're going to spend in each place. So if you're just thinking about travelling for a year, then you're probably not going to spend that year in just France and Spain like we've done. You might want to go hell for leather and try and tick off all the different countries that you want to see. So that's going to affect how you travel and how you plan things out.
Of course, the other thing that has affected us and is going to affect all of you, but wasn't relevant to us when we started, was when we finished our van, we were still in the EU, and that had been dragging on. So we didn't have to think about the Schengen. So we didn't have a 90 over 180 day restriction, so we could go into Europe, and if we wanted to, as do many people, you could have stayed a whole year and just pootled around and not have to worry about that. Plus then after that, we knew that was looming. Then obviously COVID came along, and that's then had a massive impact on full-time travel and everybody's lives as a whole, as to what you can and can't do, where you can and can't go. The border restrictions are constantly changing, so those two things, if you put them together, so if you put COVID restrictions and Schengen restrictions together, it becomes a bit of a nightmare, because you've got your 90 over 180 days, but can you get to where you want to go? Are you allowed to do that? Can you get back? Do you have to have tests? There's all kinds of parameters to think about, which then affects your plan. So if we said, hey, we're in England at the moment, in 2 weeks we'd like to be in Portugal, obviously right now we can't do that, but if we were to, and the COVID restrictions allowed that, we would only be able to spend 90 days travelling before we have to be back in the UK or in a non-Schengen area, which then again is protracted by COVID, because our original plan when we discussed it was we'd go to say Spain for 90 days, and then we'd go over to Morocco for 90 days or longer, and then we could come back to Spain or go back to England. But Morocco's been closed period for 10 months, whereas other countries have been opening and closing. So there is quite a bit of management to do with how and where you're going to be and how long you're going to travel, and sometimes your plans have to change because of COVID and or Schengen restrictions.
Well, hopefully by the time you're actually planning on doing this, all of that will be a thing of the past anyway.
I hope so. So I think overall, how long you want to travel on the road, you need to be willing to accept that that may change. So your sort of goal and vision of what you want to do and where and how you want to do that and how long you're going to be travelling might be affected by other factors. And that's kind of fun sometimes, but it is worth bearing in mind that things do change without you actually perhaps planning those in. So think about all the different parameters. Numero 6.
You need to think about how living van life will affect your relationship if you're in one, or how it will affect your dating if you're not in one. We contemplated this only very briefly while we were planning for van life, because we have been self-employed for as long as we've been together, for many years.
Yep.
So we've always lived together and worked together on the same projects most of the time, and we've kind of been like this the whole time. So the only real difference that living in a van made was that if you felt like going to a different room to get yourself a little bit of me time, me space, then obviously you can't do that in a van. But even then, with the setup of the van, you can have one person in the front, one person on the bed with the curtain shut, or somebody goes outside, so you can still get yourself a bit of space. If you're not used to living in each other's pockets, then that's something you're going to want to consider and think about carefully and have discussions about with your partner. How might it affect you? How might you get over if you have disagreements, or if living in each other's pockets in the van is getting a bit too much?
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously depends also on your relationship. Maybe you like spending all your time together, maybe you like your own space, but for us, I think I consider the world outside to be my bedroom, my front room. So if you need to get away, you can go out for a walk, you can go swimming separately, whatever. It's quite easy, but it is certainly worth considering. Then of course there's the other side, which is you're not in a relationship, so you're travelling on your own, or you're going to be travelling on your own. What about dating? How do you meet people on the road? Is that easy? Is it hard? I can't really say myself because I've never tried it, but I have spoken to other people that are in that position. Some people say it's very easy, and that may be because they're particularly sociable, but there are meet-up groups on Facebook and places like that for people that live in vans or motorhomes.
Yeah, I think if you would like to be dating, you're on the market, as they say, then obviously it's as easy as you make it for yourself. So if you're going to be sociable, you're more likely to meet somebody on the road, I guess, rather than, I don't think you're going to be on an online dating app or site and match with somebody and then arrange a date and then go, hey, by the way, I live in a van. I suppose you could, but I don't think that's probably the best way to meet somebody that's going to be understanding of your way of life. It's much more likely, I think, that if you're just at a park up and there's other people out there, that's where you're going to meet somebody. We've come across some people that have told us the most wonderful stories about how they've met. One of them lived in a van and the other one didn't, but loved the idea of living in a van. And other people that have met and they each had vans, and then they've met at a park up and gotten talking and travelled together for a bit, and then one of them moved into the other one's van. It's that's kind of cute.
Yeah, we've met people and heard of people that are a couple effectively, but they have their own van each, so they drive together. But like Missy said, there are factors. If you were in a van and you were on a dating site looking for a partner, you will get judged, perhaps unfairly in some cases. We've heard of that, where people won't meet you because you live in a van, and that has some stigma attached to it, perhaps because they're not familiar with the lifestyle. Or maybe that isn't the case, so you meet somebody who lives in a house, you're in your van, and then your relationship starts getting a bit more serious. So what are you going to do? Are you going to stop living in your van, move in their house? Are they going to move out of their house?
I'll tell you what else is probably the most precarious situation. If you live in a house at the moment, you're considering van life, and you already have a boyfriend or a girlfriend, partner, but you don't live together, and you're like, yeah, van life, and they're not so sure.
So I've seen quite a few people online that said, I want to go and live in a van or my motorhome and travel the world or whatever, but my partner doesn't want to do that. And I think when you're faced with that kind of scenario, then it's a case of, well, what's more important to you, putting it bluntly? Do you want to stay with your partner, or do you want to maybe try and convince your partner to try it out for a period of time to see if they perhaps then do like it? And only you can really make the decision. I mean, ultimately, if you're unhappy and you want to go travelling and your partner doesn't, then you've got a bit of a quandary, because then it's a bit of, do I choose my van or my partner? But certainly...
So that's definitely something to consider. Morph.
Yeah.
Hi, Morph.
Yeah.
He's
Hello.
joined us.
Yes.
That's sweet. Hey, buddy.
He's sitting on the notes as well,
no.
so now we don't know what the next point was.
Number 50.
Excuse me, buddy.
Number 7.
Siete. Numero siete.
You need to consider what your plan's going to be for winter or for bad weather. It's too easy to think, oh well, you know, living van life, just put the sliding door open, you live outside all the time, there's loads of room, it's fine. Yeah, there's always bad weather days or cold days. Think about what you might want to do. Do you have a hobby? If you don't, can you start a hobby and bring it with you, such as playing a little instrument like ukulele or the bongos? That goes down very well in van life. Drawing, some kind of art, some kind of craft.
Painting.
Yeah, that's an art.
Yeah. Not if I'm painting, it's not.
So if you've got a little hobby like that, then that makes those grey cold days a lot easier to bear. Maybe some way of watching telly. Most people have tablets or phones so that they can watch a bit of TV. You've got to prepare for cold, horrible days when you all just want to stay tucked up inside. Board games, that's always a good one. We've got loads of card games. We love Exploding Kittens.
Uno.
And Uno Flip. The other thing that people are getting really excited about these days is little teeny tiny projectors that can project. If it's cold weather, you're not going to do it on the outside of your van, but you could maybe make a screen somewhere or have a sheet that you peg up, and then you can have movie nights in the van. Ocho!
Number 8. So I would have gone poos. Poos. Something you need to think about. So number 8 is, what is your toiletry plan? So yeah, again, it's a personal choice, but do you want a toilet is the first question, or do you want to go to the toilet outside? And then...
That's really bad. Just open your door and go to the toilet. You go outside.
So let's look at the first one. So if you decided that you want to have a toilet on board, then you've got all kinds of things to consider. So if you're in a relationship or on your van with more than one person, then do you want to be going to the toilet in the open? We know a lot of people to do that, as in you might have a pull-out drawer with a toilet that's just in the van. So then are you going to do it in front of each other? Do you have to then say, hey, I need to do a poo, can you leave the van, or whatever? So then you need to decide, if you don't want to do that, you've obviously got to build yourself a bathroom kind of thing like we mentioned earlier, or some kind of curtain facility. And then you've got to decide what kind of toilet you want if you're having a toilet in the van. So
you could have a compost toilet, you could have a cassette toilet. Are there other types? They're the main two, aren't they?
So yeah, they would be the main two, the compost or the cassette. But then you've got a lot of people that literally are quite happy pooing in a bucket. We know, which is a similar kind of sort of way as a compost toilet. We know some people that literally, they pee in a bottle, they poo in a dog poo bag. I know it's not a particularly wonderful subject to discuss, but there are people that are quite happy to do that.
It's something you need to consider.
Absolutely, so you've got to think about it.
What's going to suit you. Also, another option, if you haven't thought about it, is having a toilet on board, but only doing the number ones in the onboard toilet and waiting till you're at the shops, or finding a shop or a public toilet each time you need to do anything else. Some people don't have a toilet on board and they literally just do use the shops, but I personally wouldn't want to do that because I don't like the idea of needing to go and just having to wait until you found a public toilet. Yeah. That doesn't fill me with joy.
So you've got the choice of what kind of toilet do you want, or do you not want a toilet on board? And then if you do have a toilet, the ones and twos, you're going to do both in your toilet. So looking at the negatives of all of those, if you don't have a toilet, then every time you need to go to the toilet, you have to either drive somewhere to find services, or go to a campsite, or find a bar and have a drink and then go to the toilet.
Or you have to walk out into nature and dig yourself a big deep pit. I can't remember what the guidelines are, but there's a specific depth that you need to dig down to in order to do your business and bury it. And that, we know people that do that, but it can't be easy when you're at a wild park up and there's other people around.
Yeah, I mean, for me, personally speaking, I didn't want to be lying in bed comfortably at 11 at night watching a Netflix film thinking I need to go to the loo, and then having to get up, get dressed, go out for a walk, find a suitably private place,
and then
dig a hole.
squatted on a cactus or something.
It's dark, you know, or if you're stealthing it and you're in a town and it's sort of 3 in the morning and you're not near a toilet, then where'd you go? You can't go, you have to hold it till the next day.
Or you'd have to, if you're in that situation, you'd have to plan your driving and your park ups so that you were parked near toilets all the time, and that'd be a lot of a faff.
Yeah. And then there's all kinds of other things, isn't there? Is it the shiwi?
Yeah.
Yeah. So rather than go into depths and make a long segment about toilets, really, rather than, what you need to do is look at all the different options, because there's many, and then really break it down to, do I want the convenience of being able to go at any time when it suits me on my van, or is that not important to me? Some of that is down to where you're going to be going, whether you're going to be stealthing it in towns and cities, whether you're always going to be in remote places. That would have an impact on that decision. And then of course you've got, if you do go in your van, what do you do with your toilet waste? So where do you empty it? If it's a compost toilet versus a chemical toilet, or a pull-out toilet. A chemical toilet you can only empty in certain places and so on, so you need to bear all that in mind before you make your decision.
Number 9.
Numero 9.
Van size. You need to consider what size van you like. Obviously you're going to look at which kind of van you want, but size is a different category altogether, I think. You need to think about how tall you are. We're both pretty tall people, and we definitely wanted to be able to stand upright in our van, so it had to be a high top Sprinter for us. We also got a long wheelbase because we were building the van out for 4 humans plus a whole pile of pets. We needed full-size beds and extra seats in the back, so we needed the extra length. But those kinds of things might not be a concern for you. You might not mind not being able to stand upright in your van if you're planning on spending most of your time outside of it. Or you might like the idea of getting a van where you can get underneath height barriers. There are vans that are just low enough to get underneath some of the larger height barriers.
Yeah, a lot of the VWs, T4s, T5s, they fit under the height barriers in a lot of the areas on the beaches in Spain.
Yep.
That we don't fit under.
Maybe considering whether you intend to go in stealth mode with your van and do lots of parking in cities, places like that, then you might want your van to look like a workman's van. So that'll be the size and the shape of it, thinking about that.
Yeah, and then also for us, and again it's something I see a lot online from people that are considering van life, or they're looking at buying a van, they say things like, oh, I've never driven a van before, so they want to get a really small van because they're conscious that that might be easier to drive than a long wheelbase like ours, or a Luton van, or a box van, or an even bigger van. I would say, personally speaking, now that I've lived in my van for several years, literally the first day I picked up the van, I'd never driven a van. So we're finally in our van, long wheelbase high top Sprinter. It's very exciting. First time I've ever driven a van, first time I've ever driven our van. Just driving it back to where it's going to park up for the next 6 months, and then it's going to take its transformation over from panel van to Yellow Submarine Adventure Mobile. So I was quite conscious of, you know, it's a massively long vehicle, it's extra long with its long wheelbase, it's very high, but I found it really easy to drive. If anything, I find the van easier to drive than a car because you're very high up, you've got big windows, you've got great sight of vision, but you need to consider things like if you're going to be going off-roading a bit, up mountains, to park-ups that maybe don't have very good access. So how big is your vehicle?
What kind of tyres do you want?
Yeah, absolutely. So again, like many of the things we've discussed, make yourself a list. Do you want to sleep long ways, width ways? How tall are you? Is there one of you, three of you? All factors that would affect the size of your van, whether you do or don't want a bathroom, how much space you want when your van is parked up. Do you want beds that you slide open and close to turn into sofas and a bed? Do you want the hassle of doing that versus a permanent bed?
Yep, we know people who, there are only 2 people, but they've just changed from a long wheelbase van to a medium wheelbase van because they realised that they could just, if they just shuffled their furniture around a little bit, they could be a bit more compact and it would make finding parking spaces easier. So that's obviously knowledge that they've had from travelling and living on the road. Sometimes you just don't know. I think if we were to upgrade our van, I'd go even bigger yet. I'd like to have a Luton,
Yep.
maybe a small horse box size van, so that you could get just that little bit extra living space.
And one factor that affects a lot of people, and particularly younger people in the UK, is grandad rights on your driving licence. So if your driving licence is pre-97, I think, I'll have to look that up, but if your driving licence has those rights, then I can drive a van up to 7.5 tonnes without taking any kind of test because I'm an elderly chap. But if I was 20, then my driving licence would only allow me to go up to 3.5 tonnes. So in our case, we have a 3.5 tonne Sprinter, but we had to uprate it to 4 tonnes. So if I hadn't have had grandad rights, and when we built the van we didn't know we were going to have to uprate it, I would have then had to take a driving test to drive a van over 3.5 tonnes. So for many people, from the very offset, the biggest vehicle you can get is 3.5 tonnes because of your driving licence. So that would then limit the size of vehicle that you could have, because generally speaking, the bigger the vehicle, the more it weighs.
Another thing to consider when you're choosing your van size is, I mentioned briefly parking, but supermarket parking in particular. We have to search online, we have to use Google Maps to look at the car park size in advance, and if the car park's too small then we don't bother going to it, we only go to the really big supermarkets. And then once you get there you have to make sure that you can pull into a space that has another space in front of it to slot in double, because otherwise we don't fit, we hang out.
Yep.
And that's something that we didn't even know about before we got in the van and started driving around.
And going back to one of the other points that we mentioned earlier, which is when you go into the supermarket, it is different in different countries. So in the UK, many supermarkets have height barriers. So even if they have a big car park, you can't. We came back from Europe once, and we came out of Folkestone and we were driving to meet friends, and we wanted to go to the supermarket. And we found a supermarket, had a huge car park. We got there, had a height barrier. Went to the next supermarket and there was no double bays, so we couldn't park anywhere. So suddenly it's like, well, there's nowhere that we can go shopping. So a smaller van is easier to park.
Yeah, so that, you know, that's, you can, and then if you're going through the whole of this video, you can combine the things. So obviously when we said, where are you thinking about doing van life, if you're going to do it mainly in the UK or entirely in the UK, then that is a big consideration. The supermarket car parks are generally teeny tiny.
Number 10.
Yeah.
So number 10, how will you find park-ups and where can you park? The first answer would be there's an app called Park for Night. If you're already travelling in a vehicle, you'll be well familiar with it. And it's mentioned a lot online, the pros and cons, which is a big subject in itself. But very briefly, the benefit of Park for Night is it has thousands and thousands of park-ups across every country in the world as to where you can go and park, and it goes from everything from supermarket car parks to idyllic beach park-ups.
It's got campsites on there, it's got private land that you're allowed to park on. Each of the park-ups has been put on by members of the public and has then been corroborated by, what do they call them, administrators of the app. So they've all been checked out.
Yep.
They've got ratings on them so that you can see, and reviews so that you can see what other people have thought of it or the experience that they've had while they were there, and you can see how recently that was. So you might be choosing a park up and realise that Bob was there last week and he said that it was excellent but it had no 4G signal. So you might go, okay, well that's not for me then.
Yeah. So the great thing about Park for Night is it makes it very easy to find park ups. The not so great thing about Park for Night is as soon as somebody finds a new park up that's great, if it goes on Park for Night, then potentially there can be a lot of people, particularly if it's a beach park up or something like that. So then the park ups become overused, and then the locals get upset by that because they can't go to the beach and park, and then that park up might get closed down. Then also you have to take the reviews with a pinch of salt, because we know people that when they find a really good park up, they look at Park for Night, and if it's on there, they write a bad review because they don't want other people to go there. So they say, oh yeah, we went there, it was awful, the police came, we got moved, we got fined, and then other people read that and go, I won't go there then. So you have to take that with a pinch of salt. But I would also say to not rely entirely on Park for Night, because there's loads of park ups that either people haven't found or they haven't put on Park for Night. So we quite often, if we can't find a park up or there's nothing on Park for Night that we like, we get Google Maps out, put it in satellite view, we zoom in and we look for potential places, whether it's we were looking on for a beach park up, or we're in the mountains and you look for a clearing or a little bit of woodland that looks like you can park in it and so on. So it's also quite easy to find your own park ups.
The other thing we've done is, as you're driving along and you just spot somewhere and you go, ooh, that looks nice, or you see a little track and you wonder where it goes, and you just take a punt, and some of them turn out brilliantly and some of them take you to nowhere. So if you've got time on your journey, then that's always worth having a go at.
And the negative thing of finding park ups is if you're travelling full time, let's say you've been travelling for a long time, on this particular day you're quite knackered, you've got your park up, you found it either from Park for Night or a recommendation, you get there, it's dark and there's a height barrier that went in recently, or it's full up with 45 other vans and there's nowhere to park. So then suddenly we've had it just a few times, haven't we, but where it's been actually really quite unpleasant. Well, I think the first trip we went out, we had a park up. It was in Spain. It was about 10 at night. We'd been driving for a long time. I was really knackered from the drive, and when we got there, we couldn't park. So then you're frantically looking on Park for Night or Google Maps and trying to find somewhere to go, and it can become quite stressful. And in the recent times, parking is getting harder week by week. Combination of factors, I think. With COVID, a lot of people have tried staycations and are transitioning into a part-time van life or full-time van life, or they've bought themselves a motorhome because they think, they can get themselves a holiday when they can't go abroad. So there's a lot more people on the road looking for places to park, and the more places get overused, the more they get closed, and then the rest of the park ups, the more they potentially become overused. So there's less and less places to park, less and less really good park ups, and that again, it's a massive subject, but it's true and it's false.
Well, that's also based on our experience in the places that we've been, which is mainly on the coast of Spain and a bit of Portugal, and around France, and it doesn't apply to France.
No, so, and equally if you're somebody that maybe you're going to be stealth parking, so you're happy to park in towns or cities, then suddenly that has its own set of rules. In some ways that's much easier, because you can just pull up in a residential street that has no parking restrictions and park up. But then you've got factors to consider, that sometimes people will come out of their house and knock on your door, or they might call the police and so on. We don't do stealth parking. We're in a bright yellow van with decals all on the outside, so from the offset we had no interest in parking. We don't really like town parking, do we?
No.
Industrial estates, all that
Plus
kind of thing.
Plus we've got all the dogs and the cats. We like to be somewhere where we can have the sliding door open and let them all out, and let the air in.
So as with all our other points, maybe write yourself a list. Are you going to be beach parking? Are you adventuring, going off hiking, mountain climbing, whatever your own particular desires are? Write a list out.
Some people just like to do campsites, and that's fine too. It's not van life if you like to do campsites. You just go from campsite to campsite, maybe do one night out in the wild here or one night in a vineyard there. That's and it
varies entirely by country. So France is probably the easiest country in the world because there's 6,000 airs. Some of those are like campsites in their sort of style and build, and others are just literally a picnic area in the woods in the mountains, and you can be there on your own. We've found loads. I mean, there's literally France, you could spend 10 years there and go
Yeah.
to a different park up every night, and 9 out of 10 of them would be absolutely stunning. Whereas if you then flip that to England, England's much harder to park if you're not stealth parking. There's a lot less parking places that are out in the country. We spent 6 weeks in Wales and Yorkshire, and we had a great time, but parking was a nightmare, wasn't
hard.
it? It was hard work. They were few and far between. Sometimes we had to go like 50, 60 miles just to try and find a park up.
Having said that, when we did that, we'd only been on the road for 6 weeks.
So we weren't
and
experienced.
we weren't experienced, and we do know a lot of full-time UK van life travellers. And they are obviously finding somewhere to park because they're still doing it. So
Yep. So when you find your mojo, which I think we have, travelling for nearly 2 years, you get to know a lot of other van lifers, and you share park-ups that are perhaps secret park-ups that are not on Park for Night. Sometimes we give people park-ups and we say, don't put that on Park for Night, don't share it on social media, which is not us being selfish, but it is when you're full-time and you find a real gem.
yeah.
You don't want to go back there and there's 150 people parked there, but we share them between ourselves. So the longer you travel, in some ways, the easier it becomes, because you've got the skills to work out different ways of finding park-ups, or maybe you've been in that area many times before, so you've got a favourite park-up there that you've used multiple times. So to summarise, will you be predominantly wild or free camping? What country will you be travelling in, because that makes a difference as to what is and isn't legal perhaps, or what height barriers are employed, how common height barriers are, or any other restrictions. Whether you're going to be predominantly free camping in the wild or on the coast or in a town, it's the stealthy option. So again, it's a very personal thing. Look at what you want to do and then look at how you might find park-ups relevant to the lifestyle that you want to lead, and generally speaking where you're going to be parking.
Yep. Well, there you go. That's our top 10 things to consider before you embark on van life. Now, just before you go, I wanted to let you know we release a new video every Sunday. So if you like the stuff that we put out, then do us a favour and like and subscribe. It only takes you a minute and it really helps us out with YouTube's algorithm. So that'd be we'd be very grateful if you would subscribe.
Yeah, it does make us very happy when we get...
Oh yeah, we do a happy dance every
when
subscription.
we look at
It's
videos
exciting.
and we go, oh, we got loads of likes. Or
Also, we've just set up an account on Buy Me a Coffee. So there's, we'll pop the link in the description below, and it's on our website as well. So if you fancy buying us a coffee, now you can. Although we have also set up and committed our first goal, the first £20 we make on Buy Me a Coffee, we're going to spend on pet treats. We're going to buy cat treats and dog treats, bones, biscuits, all sorts, and then we're going to stick it all in a big pile and film a video of them nomming it. Because we thought that'd be funny.
Yeah.
So just buy us a coffee or buy us some bones.
So if you're new to our channel, you may not know, as this is more of a chat video, that we have 2 cats and 2 dogs travelling on our van and living full time in our van. So that's a lot of biscuits and bones to make happy cats and dogs, isn't it?
Yeah. What's this? We're done. Oh my god, it's so cold.
Oh yeah, we had to turn the heating off to film, and yeah.
God.
It's actually -4 out when I went out for
Good
a
cheese.
smoke. I had a look. It's very chilly.
We're freezing.
So thanks for watching, and we'll see you soon.
Bye.